Hi friends, my name is Nikki and I am the host of Source Clarity Podcast. I want to help you attract the things that you are asking for, right? The things that seem like out of reach, to attract things that you're asking for, increase your magnetism, and harness high levels of clarity to, again, get the things that you're finally asking for. One of the most incredible ways to go through this process is through harnessing what we in this community, we call source clarity. When we harness that high level of clarity in our lives, we are untethering ourselves from the doubt, the fear, the negativity, the worry, and aligning with our essence. Now, why is this remarkably beneficial in our lives? Because at your core, your true essence is unconditional love. And when we align with the unconditional love that resides within us, we begin to emanate a frequency and a vibration. It's more in accordance with that unconditional love. So the people and the experiences that we begin to attract through this process are, again, more in alignment, more of a vibrational match to that unconditional love that you are at your core. Unconditional love is the highest frequency and vibration that exists on this planet. And there is a stream of love and joy that resides within you. Really, the Source Clarity adventure is an adventure in remembering who you really are. So one of the most remarkable, brilliant ways to harness that high level of clarity in our lives is to take people off of a pedestal. And that's exactly what we're going to focus in on today to begin getting more of the things that you're asking for, to increase your magnetism, to live a life that's in alignment with your purpose and your mission, so on and so forth. So many of us, whether we know it consciously or it's subconsciously, we are putting other people on a pedestal. We're putting people, we're putting circumstances, life, experiences, people's lives that we see maybe through social media. We are putting these things on a pedestal. The obstacle of this that we would run into is that in order to put someone else on a pedestal, we have to lower our own value. And if we lower our own value, this causes us to not feel connected with that stream of unconditional love that resides at our core. So I want to share some indicators of what your life might look like if you are putting people on a pedestal. Now, the reason why this is so beneficial to share is because sometimes we do this consciously, sometimes we do it subconsciously. So if we can begin to see some indicators in our life, then we can begin to make that necessary change in our life to, again, get more of the things that we're asking for, increase our magnetism, and live a life that is guided by clarity. When we live a life guided by clarity, we're living life guided by love. We're living life guided by our purpose. We're really living life guided by our intuitive intelligence, because your intuition resides within that clarity, right? Taking people off of a pedestal, it cleans up your mind. And the brain and the heart, they communicate with one another. And the heart has the greatest electromagnetic field of any organ in the body. And this is an aspect of you that allows you to create your reality. So if you clean up the brain by creating clarity there, it's going to clean up the heart, the frequency, the energy of the heart, and the things in your life just become more magnetic. So not only do you become more magnetic, but life begins to feel more passionate, exciting, so on and so forth. So some indicators that maybe you are putting, things, let's just generalize and use the word things. Okay, things meaning people, experiences, circumstances, life on a pedestal. Physical things like a car or money on a pedestal. Some indicators in your life is maybe you're getting some of the things that you're asking for, but you don't know how to even enjoy it. Maybe you're in a relationship and you feel like it's lost its magnetism, it's lost its excitement. Maybe you're sort of curious where you are in regards to your purpose and your mission. Maybe you're in a social environment or maybe anytime you're in a social environment, you feel drained. You feel like there's something weighing you down frequently, or you don't feel magnetic when you walk into a room and you're like, what's going on? Why are certain people magnetic? Why are certain people not magnetic? What is going on? I'm doing all the right things to attract what I desire. This all goes back to you realizing your value. When we put other people on a pedestal, we are lowering our own sense of value. We are sort of disconnecting from that stream of joy, that love that resides within us. It's sort of like if you think of a flowing river, It's sort of like the dam that would stop that river, that, those limiting beliefs associated with the feeling of lowering your own value. But the question is, why do we even do this in the first place, right? So to think about it again, and just for me to say it again and say it, out loud one more time, to put anything on a pedestal, we have to lower our own value. Okay? If we lower our own value and we attract what we're a vibrational match for, our life is going to reflect that feeling that we have harnessed within. It's an absent of clarity feeling. It's a disconnected from who we really are feeling. So if I'm not seeing myself for who I really am, I'm going to attract life experiences that are going to amplify that feeling. The question is, why do we go through this process in the first place? Why do we even put other people on a pedestal? So the important thing to understand is that we have 8 different areas of our life. We have a whole podcast that talks about each of the 8 areas. But some of those areas that we can share right now would be like social, family, mental, money, career. I'm going through all of them right now. Passion, hobby. That's 6. What are the other 2? Vocation. And then there is social. Did I say social? Family? Financial? If I missed one of the 8 and you've been in this community for a while, feel free to write it in the comments so that people know what we're talking about for those that are new. Hey, I'm repositioning. All right, so understand this. The question is, why do we put other people on a pedestal in the first place? Well, we have these 8 different areas of our life, and I might feel good about one of the areas of my life. Maybe mentally, I feel pretty good about like my ability to absorb information mentally, or my mental acuity and my ability to whatever it may be. But maybe financially, I don't feel so good about myself. Maybe financially, I've never had a good relationship with my finances. Or maybe I feel like I have a high spiritual IQ, but maybe in regards to my career, I don't feel good. What happens with this process, if I don't feel good about my relationship with one or more of the 8 different areas of my life, it's going to cause me to feel deficient in love, disconnected with that stream of joy and love that resides within me. Now, when I go through this process, I'm going to feel small. What happens when I feel small? I really want you guys to get this. This creates an emotional bias. So you have a true nature self, and this true nature, it has authentic pulls, it has authentic wants to attract things. If I'm feeling disconnected from who I really am because I don't feel good about my relationship with one or more of the 8 different areas of my life, maybe with my family life, maybe with my career, finances, it's going to cause me to feel small. That deficiency of love is going to cause me to not see life through the intuitive lens. For those that are new here, the thing that disconnects us from our intuition is emotional bias. So it's going to create an influx of doubt and emotional bias. So the ego has this job, and its job is to protect you at all costs. So what the ego is going to do, it's going to see someone's life on social media. It's going to see someone's life on the outside. Maybe you're in school and you see like the popular person. What the ego does, it only sees one side of a scenario typically in order to keep you feeling safe. So the ego, because it feels unsafe, because it feels disconnected with that stream of love that resides within you, okay, is going to go, maybe if you have a life like that person you see on social media, then you will be happy. And all of a sudden the brain goes, yeah. Or maybe if you like get a lot of money and have that type of lifestyle, then you'll be happy. Well, the way that this universe works is if we are dependent on happiness from only one area of life, it's going to cause a lot of havoc in our lives. And this is why we have 8 different areas of our life. But if we can realize that the things that we desire to attract, we only desire them because of the feeling. And if we realize that feeling resides within us, this is where our life significantly changes for the better. You might be asking how. Well, let's say I desire to attract something like financial abundance in my life. I've placed financial abundance on a pedestal. And I started to go, the ego starts to go, well, Nikki, if you attract financial abundance, then you're going to be happy. This is what begins the process of putting things on a pedestal. When really, if I were to look through the intuitive lens, my intuitive self is saying, that feeling that you think money is going to bring you, it resides within you. And maybe I can access that feeling through meditation, right? Creating space within my mind. if we think of money as ingredients, and like the feelings associated with money would be like the feeling of freedom, the feeling of value, of safety and security. So what if I went, okay, maybe I can harness that feeling of value, safety, security within my meditation practices? Or what if I begin to see myself for who I really am? And this is actually how we begin the process of taking things, right? We're going to use that word to just generalize everything. Things, people, experiences, circumstances, life, off of a pedestal. What if we started to go, man, the thing that I'm admiring in someone else, it resides within me. I used to have this obstacle where I didn't feel like I was consciously putting certain people on a pedestal, but I was. I was subconsciously putting other people on a pedestal, and it would cause me to feel that high level of resistance. It would cause me to feel restricted in my own life. And I would think consciously, I would kind of go, well, I don't compare myself in regards, maybe it was like physically at the time. I don't compare myself, and I'll go through this list, and I couldn't figure out where I was comparing myself. And what I realized, it had to do with completely different areas of life that I didn't even realize. It was hidden in my subconscious mind. And I remember at the time, it would be like money. I'd compare myself to their relationship with money, at least how it appeared on the outside, versus what felt like my relationship with money. And I realized that when I began to change my relationship with money, all of a sudden those insecurities, that resistance began to go away. Here's the truth. What you see in other people resides within you. Now you might be going, you're kind of like, well, dude, that sounds great and exciting. But like, I just saw Michael Jordan, like a highlight video of him dunking a basketball. I can't do that. Maybe if I worked really hard. Here's what does reside within you. What you're seeing in Michael Jordan is him activating his own excellence. Now, the only reason why you're putting someone else on a pedestal is because you feel out of balance in one or more of the 8 different areas of your life, and you're not realizing in one or more of those 8 different areas of your life, you can access a high level of excellence. You can access a high level of brilliance. You were not meant to be Michael Jordan. You were not meant to be Albert Einstein. You were meant to be the best, most excellent version of you. And that version of you is not a changing process. It's a realizing process, the remembering process. And yes, you can strengthen the relationship with who you really are, and your life will begin to change and things of that nature, but it's not a changing who you are. And this really all goes back to strengthening the relationship with your intuitive self. Because when you put other people on a pedestal, you are lowering your own value. This creates an influx of emotional bias, that emotional bias meaning resistance, negativity, fear, doubt. Now you're living a life that is influenced by negativity, fear, doubt, worry, versus living life guided by the greatest guiding light that we have on this planet, and that's our intuitive brilliance, the greatest North Star that we have on this planet. That is our intuitive intelligence that resides within each and every one of us. How do we begin to access this? Well, what we're talking about today is taking other people off a pedestal, taking life off a pedestal. The ego tends to only see one side of the coin. Okay, it was pretty interesting. I was in a healing session recently with someone, and I was asking about a circumstance in my life where, I had this circumstance in my life that I've talked about frequently. I think through the podcast and our different offerings, through the Creating Clarity webinar, which you can join, through these other offerings that we have, the podcast, Saturday service, and I consciously have overcome this. Now, it was an experience in middle school where I was frequently picked on by another human being. Now, consciously, I've overcome that, but I can kind of feel that emotionally, I still didn't have an understanding as to why they treated me the way that they treated me. Now, at that time, I kind of began to put this kid on a pedestal because this kid in middle school, he was popular. He got all the girls on the outside. He appeared to be, tough and strong and all these other things. And I can explain to you, right, mentally, and I think a lot of you guys can relate to this, like the truth of the situation, meaning like he probably had a difficult time in his life and all these other things, but emotionally, my subconscious still didn't fully get it. And I had an intuitive I was working with, and this intuitive looked in, knew nothing about the scenario, and said they were having a challenging time in their home and with their parent. I think they said their dad or something. And I was like, man, that resonates so deeply. And all of a sudden I can feel my nervous system kind of take that kid off a pedestal, even though this happened when I was a kid, because, we're still carrying our child wounds. And I have overcome this in a lot of ways. But all of a sudden, when I began to see the full picture, is when I began to take things off of a pedestal. And when I began to, when I saw the full picture, meaning when I was a kid, I only saw one side of this kid who picked on me. I saw that, I knew he had a lot of money, okay, because he did. He got a lot of girls, which I saw on the outside. I saw that he liked to pick fights, so I assumed that he was tough. What I didn't see was his family life. What I didn't see is the difficulties and the insecurities that were arising in his own life. And so imagine if I knew that when I was a kid, right? Would I have put him on a pedestal? Would I have, dealt with that scenario in a different way? Would I have been as insecure? Because my family life, really great, really vibrant, really beautiful. And I'm sharing this with you guys because a lot of the reason that we put things, remember, we're using the word, for lack of a better word, we're using the word things to generalize and really, this umbrella of people that we put on a pedestal, life, experiences. A lot of the times we see life through this black and white lens. We go, money, it must only be good. People with money must only be happy, or people that are living this extravagant life that we see on social media, their lives must be good. And now I should probably live my life like that. And I remember, seeing a couple of people on social media growing up that traveled quite a bit. They live in this life of travel, jumping out of airplanes, doing all these cool things. And I listened to one of these guys on a podcast, and he said, man, my life looks so good on the outside. But he said, my life was a disaster. Like, it looks fun. And it was, he said there were aspects of it that were fun, but people were only seeing the fun. They weren't seeing the disaster in this relationship that he was posting on social media. And I remember, I'd put travel on a pedestal for quite a bit. And I was out in Greece, right? I was doing, quite a bit of traveling. I was out in Hawaii and I had a really great time. I did some traveling throughout the U.S. I put a bed in the back of my Jeep and slept in my Jeep. This was years ago. And then I started to generate some money in my business, and I go to Hawaii, and then I ended up going to Greece. And I had placed Greece and going to Hawaii and all these experiences on a pedestal. And I just remember being out in Greece, and I was able to, at that time, afford, for one of the first times, a nice Airbnb, it was on the water. It came with a kayak. It was gorgeous on the outside. It was beautiful. And I remember feeling so disappointed because I didn't feel that high level of joy that I desired to feel. Now, the reason for this is because I was placing these experiences on a pedestal. If I were to ask you, hey, do you want to travel to Greece? Do you want to go to Hawaii? Whatever it may be. And you might be like, yeah, that sounds exciting. If you only see one side of a coin, you're going to be left disappointed because you're placing it on a pedestal. Now, this process of placing things on a pedestal, it's going to cause you to frequently feel disappointed. Maybe it's in regards to relationships. Maybe it's in regards to career. When I first embarked on the adventure in creating a business, I remember I would be visualizing having a podcast and how fun my life would be. And I was living in Los Angeles, I think at the time, when I first had the idea for it. And I'm I'm going to create a podcast. I'm going to surf all the time. And then I actually began to create a podcast. And let me tell you, challenging. It was not this romanticized thing within my mind. Now, long term it is, but that process of learning and strengthening that muscle of communication, and then at first editing my podcast and realizing that was hurting me more than benefiting me, so then having to talk for the full length of the podcast and learn new topics and talk about them in these more details and advanced ways, and learn how to talk about information that might be fundamental, but in these advanced ways, I found it challenging. But I placed these experiences on a pedestal, and it created more obstacle in my life. I've experienced this even with mentorship, like my own mentor, secretly putting them on a pedestal. What this did is it lowered my own capacity to increase my intuitive brilliance, to pull brilliant channeled information. And when I realized this, because it was sort of stored in my subconscious mind, I didn't fully realize it because I love my mentor so much, but it was in my subconscious mind. And most people, what they do is maybe they have a therapist that they're working with, or a teacher or a mentor, spiritual advisor. And let's say that this therapist or the spiritual advisor, let's say that they're actually meant to be in your life. What happens is if you're frequently even without knowing it, placing them on a pedestal, is that eventually what will happen because of the law of opposing forces is that you're going to get tired of them. And then you're going to go into this place of resistance and wishing that you didn't work with them, and you're going to completely abandon them when you're probably meant to work with them. But because the way that the universe works, the pendulum is swung to you're only seeing the negative aspects of them, because at one point you were only seeing the positive aspects of them. So when I learned how to take the people I was meant to work with off of a pedestal, it changed everything. I found this balance and realizing my own voice. And even when I learn information, I've realized this technique that I teach all of the people that I work with one-on-one, meaning people that I mentor or I teach or whatever it may be. I always remind them to take things off of a pedestal. I go, even the words that I'm sharing with you, right? The subconscious is tricky because anytime we put something on a pedestal, a person, an experience that we desire to have, we're lowering our own value. We're only seeing life through this one-sided lens. And if we're only seeing things through a one-sided lens, the way that the universe works is that everything has to be in perfect balance. So then we're only going to see the opposite of that one thing, and it disconnects us from our intuitive self. So again, going back to the beginning of this, how do we begin to increase our magnetism and attract more of the things that we're asking for? How do we begin to harness high levels of clarity? It's to begin this process of identifying all the moments, all the people, all the experiences that you have placed on a pedestal. Are you someone that goes, one day when I attract X, Y, and Z, then I will be happy? Are you someone that goes, I wish I had this person's life? And maybe mentally you don't, but emotionally you still do. I love when I work with someone and they're asking me about romantic relationship, and they tell me, they go, I don't really want a relationship. And I look at intuitively and I'm like, yeah, you do. Your want is at about an 89%. They think they don't want it, but they're not emotionally connected with it. So we have to be honest with ourselves. A lot of the times I have not mentally put people on a pedestal, but emotionally I still have, right? And this is, it's one of the greatest things that you can begin to catch, because what you'll realize is that day-to-day moments have this beauty that most people downplay or don't see. Day-to-day life experiences, something as simple as watering your plants. If you can learn the technique of taking life off a pedestal, it'll allow you to see the perfection in watering your plants, washing the dishes, interacting with your friends. This person that I've talked about on the podcast before is this worker at Whole Foods, and I go to this Whole Foods frequently. And this worker, one of the first times I saw him, he works at one of those stands that gives out samples. He had a cane with him, and I began to engage with conversation and learned that he can't see, that he's blind. And I remember at first when I had this interaction with him, my brain went to this place of feeling bad for him. And I had to catch myself and go, is that really how he wants me to see him? Right? Now, what I began to realize is because I so frequently put other life experiences on a pedestal, I couldn't see the perfection in him working at this job. And now each Saturday, it's sort of been routine that I go and see him and I get one of his samples and we engage with conversations. And I've had to practice this own muscle of not feeling sorry for him. All of life is a reflection of our energy. So what I realized is I really just feel sorry for myself. Why was I feeling sorry for myself? Because I was placing certain life experiences, things on a pedestal, feel like I didn't have them. Last Saturday, I'm interacting with him. And I can feel that I wasn't feeling sorry for him. I can feel this really like our conversation felt a little bit more vibrant. It's been a muscle that I've been practicing, is not feeling sorry, because I realize on the outside that might make you seem like a good person. But who we are at our core, you are a good person. And feeling sorry for someone, it's a beautiful thing because there's empathy involved, but you're sort of placing a limitation on that person to feel sorry from. So like initially to feel sorry for an animal, that's great because it creates that initial movement. But then to start to see life through the lens of Source is to start to see life through the perfection of everything. And it really helps you change your own life and others. My point with this is I'm interacting with him at Whole Foods and I asked him if he liked his job. And his response is, I love it. He's like, I love my job. He's like, I absolutely love my job. He's like, I'm so grateful for it. He's the first disabled person, I think, or blind person. I'm going to have to double check. Either disabled or blind to work at a Whole Foods. And he's so proud of it and he's so happy. And, I've been practicing this muscle of taking life's experiences off a pedestal. And even the conversation just seemed more fun. So what you'll begin to realize is that when you begin to take people off of a pedestal, like, I had to go back into the archives of my mind and ask myself this question: who did I put on a pedestal that like my subconscious still kind of does? And when we looked through the intuitive lens, with that kid in middle school who picked on me, I saw his life objectively. I saw objectively he was having a difficult time, regardless of how things worked on the outside. When I began to look at, this worker at Whole Foods who can't see his life objectively, I started to let go of seeing it through this one-sided lens and go, oh, he actually enjoys working at Whole Foods. I looked in intuitively and I'm like, his joy is way high, right? But we tend to deem certain experiences as a lot of fun and ones as not a lot of fun. When I had, this experience out in Greece, on the outside it looked great, but I'm kind of like freaking out. I'm like, why aren't I having a lot of fun? Because fun, joy, happiness exists in our day-to-day life. And if you can begin to develop a mastery over appreciation for your day-to-day life's experiences, develop a mastery over realizing the perfection in all things, meaning seeing the positive aspect of things, seeing the negative aspects of things, and seeing the perfection in them, this is the thing that's going to increase your frequency and vibration and going to allow you to realize your true value. When you realize your true value, this is where you begin to attract things that you're asking for. This is self-image work. When you begin to see you for the brilliance, the genius that you are at your core, you are no longer putting things on a pedestal. You are objectively seeing you through the lens of source energy. Source sees everything through the lens of objectivity. And if you can practice this muscle, it is a muscle. Let go of lying to yourself and begin to see things objectively. So you're like, Nikki, this sounds great, but where do I go from this? Well, it's to catch yourself in these moments when you're scrolling on social media and you see, like, let's say maybe you're single and you see a couple holding hands, okay? And you're like, man, I wish I had their life. The idea is to go, there's probably something in their life that I don't know about that I wouldn't want to have in my life, that I wouldn't trade my life for theirs, right? Even if someone, let's say you have your own business and you feel like someone has surpassed you in business, you have to catch yourself in those moments and go, there's probably other things that I just don't know about that they're going through in their life. Everything in this universe has to be in perfect balance. So nothing is as good as it seems. Nothing is as bad as it seems. And if you can begin to practice this muscle, developing a mastery over realizing the perfection in who you are, in life, in its experiences, in money, this is going to allow you to take things off of a pedestal. When you take things off a pedestal, you increase your own value. You increase your own magnetism when you walk into a room. It's not that you're totally denying or downplaying things. You're seeing things for what they truly are. And that is the truth. Like, if you think about someone that has a high level of celebrity, some of them are pretty open about the chaos that goes on in their life. But many people, they place celebrities, they place their life experiences on a pedestal. We manifest what we're a vibrational match for. So if you're putting something on a pedestal, there will always be a distance from you and that thing. Right? I've talked about this story frequently, but I'm going to share it again. When I was in middle school and I first started to learn about the laws of the universe and manifestation, and I didn't really have a heart. No, I should say this. I had a heart understanding of how this stuff worked, but I still didn't make sense mentally. And I watched this movie called The Secret. And The Secret had this technique where it was like, write on a piece of paper that this person's in love with you and they'll be in love with you. So every single day I would write this person I had a crush on a piece of paper, their first and last name loves my first and last name every day. And then I had these like stacks of paper, right? Literally stacks of paper that I would hide in this drawer in my room. It had a key. My cousins would always want to know what's in there. And it's like this, they didn't know. But through that process, do you guys think that I attracted that girl to have a crush on me back? No. Because through that process, I started to place her on a pedestal. I wasn't seeing her for who she really was. True unconditional love is to see the negative, to see the positive, and have a love for it. That's why animals are so incredible, because they sort of like force your hand to not put them on a pedestal, because you see If you own an animal, you'll see that like when you're first training like a dog, they poop in the house, they pee in the house, they're not potty trained, they're like little baby sharks, the way that they bite you, like you have to take them off a pedestal. But what you learn through that process is unconditional love, because you have to show up for them, you have to walk them, you have to bring them outside. For those that have children, you know that like, and I don't have kids and I don't have a pet, but my friend just got a Dalmatian puppy and I'm at her house all the time helping her trainer and stuff. But like with children, you really learn about unconditional love because you see the negative aspects of having kids, but then you realize the rewards on the other side. It really forces your hand to not put things on a pedestal. And when you do this, it's the most life-changing thing that you could ever do for yourself, because to put someone on a pedestal, it's uncomfortable for them because they're not feeling seen for who they really are. They're not feeling seen for the love that they are, right? People want to be seen for their flaws and still loved for them. People want to know that even if they mess up, they are still loved. And if you've ever been placed on a pedestal by someone else, you can feel that that person just doesn't know their own value. And so they're placing you on a pedestal because they're feeling deficient in love in one of the 8 different areas of our life. So our job is to start to go, how can I begin to take life's experiences? How can I begin to take people off of a pedestal? And this is a practice. This isn't an overnight thing, but it's to let go of taking things too seriously. There's something that we can tap into that we in this community, we like to call it playful objectivity. And if you can kind of see life through the lens of playful objectivity, it's not too high, it's not too low, it's objective with sort of a playful sort of edge in the way that you see things. It has you sort of like letting go of attachment. It sort of has you in this playful, joyous state, and it allows you to take things off of a pedestal. I mean, I so frequently went through this process when I lived in Los Angeles and I was pursuing music at that time. There were these people that had like a little bit of fame that I kind of knew a little bit, didn't really know them, but I wanted to know them. And I would go to all these like shows that they would have. Not all of them, there's probably like 2 or 3. My point is, I remember interacting with them and I would feel my own value start to decrease because I'd put their lifestyle on a pedestal. They had like a lot of followers. Their music careers were like, they were low level famous, maybe like B, C level famous at that time. And anytime I'd interact with them, I wouldn't feel that good because I'd placed them on a pedestal. They could feel that. And there was no friendship that ever really continued. It was because I placed them on a pedestal. Now I want you to think back to your own life. Who spiritually are you placing on a pedestal? Who mentally are you placing on a pedestal? Who financially are you placing on a pedestal? Maybe someone physically you are placing on a pedestal. Maybe their physical appearance, maybe their confidence you are placing on a pedestal. What I would challenge you and encourage you to see is the other side of that coin, and maybe start to ask yourself, okay, maybe it appears that they don't struggle physically, but guaranteed, because of the laws of this universe, there's something that they are struggling with deeply in your life that you wouldn't trade your life for. There's something else to realize. Once again, what you see in others is a direct reflection of what you have access to. So again, if you look at someone like an Albert Einstein, you're like, dude, I don't know if I have the capacity to be Albert Einstein. That's not the goal here. The goal is to realize you have an Albert Einstein level excellence or genius that resides within you that you can access, that you can activate within yourself. Okay, so typically, if we're like, I wish I had that person's life, we're placing it on a pedestal and we're only seeing one side of the coin. We're not seeing the bigger picture of their life. And if you could see the bigger picture of your life, guaranteed you wouldn't trade your life for theirs. Why? How do I know this? Well, when you develop your intuition, you're able to realize that each of us has this brilliant higher self. It's our true nature. It's who we really are. And our higher selves choose the lives that we're going to have, the parents, our teachers, our friends, our siblings, our physical form. Our higher self chooses all these things to optimize our life experience and to live a life in alignment with our purpose. And so if we can begin to look through the lens of objectivity, that aligns you with that higher self. And that higher self chose those things. A lot of the times when we have these frustrations and we go, man, I have these things in my life, Well, who are you referring to when you say I? Are you referring to your ego, or are you referring to your higher self, right? Because maybe you feel like you don't have a lot of money right now, but if you saw your life through the lens of objectivity, through the lens of source, through the lens of unconditional love, you would see that you not having a lot of money right now is strengthening your relationship with your meditative self, with your spiritual self, with your resilience, with your ability to learn more about money, and it's going to bring you more money long term, right? So again, the ego tends to see things through this one-sided lens. And even when you think that you're not putting other people or their life's experiences or their life on a pedestal, most likely you are. Most people are frequently putting other people on a pedestal because they can only see one side of that coin. The truth is you, and when I say you, I mean your core essence, your truth, your true self, chose the life that you have so you wouldn't change the circumstances. Maybe you feel like you aren't experiencing social abundance and you're like, I would choose to have social abundance. Again, who are you referring to? Your ego or your higher self, which is who you really are? Maybe if you feel absent of social abundance, you're learning how to love being on your own. You're learning how to love having a connection with your guides, your angels, and realizing that loneliness is a feeling, it's not real. You can never be alone. You can be on your own, but you can't be alone. So maybe you're learning how to dissolve that feeling of loneliness and realizing there is a stream of abundance, social abundance, yes, that resides within us. And through that process, you're going to have a lifetime worth of high quality soul friends, family, so on and so forth. And without this current experience of feeling absent of social abundance, you wouldn't have that long-term success, right? So all the things that we have in our life, we're meant to have them. Yes, we can change them. Yes, we can get more of the things that our ego desires to get, but we have to let go of placing things, people on a pedestal. To see someone for who they really are is to see their flaws and love them anyways, to see where they're not perfect and love them anyway. They say don't meet your heroes. Why? Because they'll probably show you some flaws that you haven't seen through a screen, that you didn't see in the movies that you've loved of them growing up or them on stage. Maybe you didn't see their flaws, but then you interacted with them and you're like, wow, this is just a human being. And it causes you to do the opposite, completely take them off a pedestal. So sort of harnessing true unconditional love is to take things off a pedestal. Take it all off a pedestal. Take this podcast off a pedestal. Take, the experiences that you desire to have off a pedestal, and realize the perfection that you're looking for is all around you. Just like my friend that works at Whole Foods and loves his job working, giving samples away at Whole Foods. He finds a joy in his day-to-day life. What would happen if you begin to find a joy in your day-to-day life? Maybe you'd begin to attract more joy, more abundance. Things like money, they are an amplifier. And if you place money on a pedestal, it's always going to be far away from you. You'll never begin to attract money. You'll never have it because it'll always be on a pedestal. And if something's on a pedestal, life is reflecting our dominant vibration, right? If you put that dream romantic partner on a pedestal like middle school Nikki did, there'll always be distance from you and that person that you have a crush on. Why do we have a crush on someone in the first place? Because we feel deficient in love in one or more of the 8 different areas of our life. And we think that person that we have a crush on is going to allow us to feel more vibrant about ourselves, more passionate about our own lives, more in love with who we are, more valuable with ourselves. Maybe it's in regards to money. Maybe it's in regards to your physical body. Maybe it's in regards to who you are at your core. So if you can start to ask yourself this question, what do I want? Why do I want it? And start to actually reveal the answer, right? Why do I want a lot of money? Well, I'd feel more free. And then you start to go, how can I begin to give myself that freedom right now? Right? How can I begin to take money off a pedestal? They say 80% of the people that win the lottery are more broke 5 years later. It's because they weren't seeing how money is equally negative and equally positive. If you see all the negatives, you can prepare for the negatives. We talked about, I think it was the previous episode of Source Clarity Podcast, the law of highs and lows, that when you only see something through the lens of good, You're dismissing the negative, and the universe is going to bring you down. If you only see the negatives of something, the universe is going to bring you up, and you're going to be on this emotional roller coaster. To take things off a pedestal is to increase your magnetism, is to get more of the things that you're asking for, and really is to align with your core essence. And your core essence is unconditional love. Who you are at your core is an expression of the all that is. You were made in the image of source energy. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Source Clarity Podcast. We would love if you feel pulled to leave a like, leave a comment, a review. If you feel pulled to send it to someone, we are looking to reach as many lives as possible. And if you feel someone's life would change from this, feel free to send it to them. And yeah, we have also been releasing our Saturday service audios and its own podcast, so you can listen to that also in the show notes. And we also have webinars. They're called they're complimentary Creating Clarity webinars. And you can join, you can ask questions to me. We have a beautiful community, and all of that is also in the show notes, where you can secure your spot for our next webinar, where we talk about all of this and more. We take it to the next level. So again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Source Clarity Podcast. Stay awesome and authentic.